Question for you. What's your risk tolerance when it comes to marketing? When it comes to marketing your design firm, what's your risk tolerance? I'm not sure that anyone has asked themselves that question, but it's come up for me this week, and that's what we're going to be talking about here on episode 7 of the podcast. Stay tuned. Giving architects and landscape architects the tools and strategies to be seen, heard, and valued in the marketplace, and telling the stories of leaders building thriving design firms and attracting their ideal clients. This is From Architecture to Profitecture. I'm your host, Jay Krakowski. Let's get started. Fellow and future Profitex, how are you? Welcome to the show. This is episode 7 of From Architecture to Profitecture, and today we're talking about risk tolerance. What, Jake? What are you talking about? Well, I was prompted to create this episode, honestly, based on the events, on things that are happening in the economy and in the world. And if you're watching the replay, first, thank you. Second, look up the events of March 9th, the week of March 9th, 2020. I'm recording this here on Thursday, March 12th. But in reading a few articles about the stock market and the economy over breakfast this morning, there were several, but one particularly caught my eye about taking a pause, taking a step back and looking at your aversion to or your love of risk. And certainly they're talking about investments and not checking your 401k balance every other minute because you're not going to like it. But that got me thinking about, are we often thinking that way about our marketing? And certainly in the context of social media, where we're looking at day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute responses and posts, putting them out there. And if they're not getting the response, AKA ROI, that we think they should, well, we question their value. We question, why the heck are we doing this at all? And so to jump back to the investment discussion, when there are blips in the economy, when there are impending downturns, the reactive response is to rush and open the web browser and look at your balance and call your advisor and get your heart rate up a little bit, which is completely understandable. We work very hard in what we do to bring home what we do and to sustain our families and to build a future and to build a long-term plan for post-professional career. In looking at marketing, are we waiting until the year's end or the end of a quarter? We're almost to the end of Q1 2020 here to take a look at the ROI of our firm's marketing and make decisions, maybe make rash decisions based on a lack of ROI, when I think when you're setting out to build an investment portfolio, you build a long-term plan. You have an understanding of, you have this X many years until retirement or until you want to make other sizable investments, sizable purchases, sizable travel plans or life-changing plans. So you make a bigger plan for that and you incrementally work towards that goal. Well, building the brand of a design firm is no different. When you set out and build a business plan, there's a marketing component of that. And in this day and age, it has to include online marketing. It has to include a social media presence. What I am cognizant of on a weekly basis is not getting caught up in the number of likes or followers or comments, subscribers, any of that, because there's a long-term goal here. What I've set out and what was prompted by the turn of the decade is to set out actually an 8-year plan. I have a plan until 2028. Now, beyond that, I'm not sure yet, but I have an 8-year plan. So that feeds me. And I've got that all written down, and that's broken down into an annual goal for 2020 here. That's broken down into quarterly goals and then into the month, and then week by week, it feeds into those. So what I wanted to talk about today is, as opposed to having a reactive response to say, hey, we've spent X thousands of dollars with a social media manager this year, or a graphic an outsourced graphic designer this year, and we're not sure if it's made a return on the investment. Let's cut it. Take a step back and think about the overall brand that you're building. What is the strength of the online presence that you want to build, or the strength of the presence in your industry or in your local market that you want to build, and go from there. So that these individual posts, whether they're getting reactions, engagements, likes, followers, comments, subscribers, yada, yada, or not, there's a bigger picture here, and stay the course. That's really what I want to get across here, because it's so prevalent in kind of the mood today, the mood this week, with everything going on in the world and the honestly pending bear market. And as an aside, there's probably a whole list of podcast episodes, not just from myself, talking about diversification and staffing and outsourcing and remote work that's going to follow in the coming weeks and months, as we seek to sustain our design firms and keep our staff intact and keep the workload intact. But again, that's an aside. Today, I just want to talk about marketing and talk about the idea of risk tolerance as it relates to making decisions based on single posts, on single advertisements, even if we're talking about print documentation or even networking, in-person networking events, measuring the ROI and making the decision never to do that again. Well, that's not always the best decision, because there's a bigger picture to the brand that you're building. There's certainly a bigger picture to the brand that I'm trying to build here and in my design firm. The proactive response, both in your investments and in building your design firm, is make a plan and stick to it. Just make a plan and stick to it. And you can say that in all instances. I was looking at some examples leading into the broadcast today. I want to say it's about 3 years ago where I first found Eric Reinhold and 30 by 40 Design Group. I want to say he had 5,000 subscribers, maybe 3,000 on YouTube. As of today, it's 530,000. And that's because he stayed the course. He found a craft outside or in addition to the practice of architecture that he loved, and he has built a following around that. And I have to believe that design contracts have come from that following. The Entree Architect podcast, as I believe, Mark R. LePage is not practicing architecture. He's running the Entree Architect brand and is now branching out into Gable Media with additional podcasts. Mike Rosica, a young architect, has started his own conference outside practicing architecture. I don't believe he practices architecture at all. Other podcasts, Inside the Firm, Spaces, Midnight Charrette, Business of Architecture. They started with a handful of subscribers. I'm starting with less than a handful of subscribers. I'm looking at the count right here, but that's okay, because we're building something bigger. We're building something for the long term, and you just need to make a plan and stick to it. You can't get discouraged on even a quarter by quarter basis, which is hard to stomach sometimes. There's a whole other discussion of whatever the economy decides to do here about stomaching the loss of revenue. But really, I want to focus on just marketing and engagement for this podcast. So love to hear your comments or questions. Let's go forth and continue to attract our ideal clients and do great work and learn more and more about how to market ourselves consistently on these ever evolving online platforms. So go out there and get a great week, because your success is inevitable. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you stay up to date with future episodes. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn at Jake Krakowski. And for show notes and much more, visit profitecturebydesign.com/podcast.